Last weekend, I flipped through some of the old notebooks of my first days as a consultant, and I stumbled upon a quote from Reinhold Wirth. He once said, "We are concept giants, but we are drafts in execution." And I think that's true for many companies, actually for many projects. But the question is, why is it so difficult? Why do we struggle in executing projects? If you think it through, if someone writes a concept, a very clever concept, and gives it to sales guys and says, "This is the way you need to work in the future," would you say, "Yes, Chaka, I want to do it"? And even if you wanted to, would you be able to change your behavior immediately, to get rid of old habits and work in a different way? Probably not. And this is true for other topics as well. If you, for example, build a house, usually you make a plan, you give it to the craftsman, and they're supposed to build it the way you want it. But usually things come differently, changes need to happen during the building phase, and so on and so on. So the question is, how can you avoid this? And I give you an example. A couple of years ago, I was tasked with restructuring the sales organization of a big German car manufacturer. And actually, most managers working in these structures opposed the project. So we decided together with this car manufacturer to spend a lot of time in discussing with the affected managers and the affected teams. We struggled with arguments, we discussed pros, cons, we came up with ideas, and at the end of the day, we probably came up with an organizational concept which was, let's say, 80% of the initial hypothesis, but they accepted it. It was actually a very successful project. So what can you learn from it? If you want a project to be successful and not to fail, you should do three things. Number one is you should spend a lot of time in explaining the why. Not only to the project team, but to the whole company. And not only once, but continuously. People need to understand why changes are necessary or at least desirable. The next point is write the concept with the people who need to execute it. It needs to be their concept. It needs to be their baby, and they need to stand behind it. And the third one is be flexible on the how, but not on the what. What I mean is, if you consider the example I mentioned before, we were not flexible in the target situation of the new organization, but we were flexible in the way we implemented it. This increased acceptance, and at the end of the day, it was better to 100% implement a 70% concept compared to not implementing a 100% concept at all.